Bonjour mes élèves, c'est Madame Brown, and today I'm going to talk to you about indirect object pronouns in French, les compléments d'objet indirects, COI. This is the second of 3 videos on object pronouns. The first video I talk about direct object pronouns, and in the third video I will talk about how to combine direct and indirect object pronouns within the same sentence. First, let's review. What is a pronoun? A pronoun is a word that replaces a proper noun. Examples in English are I, me, you, he, him, she, her, we, us, they, them, and it. And if you're from Texas, y'all. Now that you've learned about direct object pronouns, COD, it's time to learn about indirect object pronouns, les compléments d'objet indirects, COI. These are similar to direct object pronouns in that they also appear before the verb, but when it comes to the passé composé, they don't affect the past participle. In other words, no agreement needs to be made for the gender and number of the COI. Now, what is an indirect object? If you don't know what an indirect object is in English, then you're really going to struggle to know what it is in French. So let's review. An indirect object is a noun that indirectly receives the action committed by the subject. For example, in the sentence, John gives the apple to Marie. John is the subject, the apple is a direct object, and Marie is an indirect object. Right? The apple receives the direct action of the verb gives. Marie sort of indirectly receives some of that action. How to recognize an indirect object in French. In French, an indirect object is often, though not always, preceded by a preposition. For now, let's focus primarily on verbs with the preposition a. For example, Luc gives the apple to Marie. Luc donne la pomme à Marie. A is our preposition. Marie is our indirect object. What is an indirect object pronoun? An indirect object pronoun replaces the name of the indirect object. So instead of saying Luc gives the apple to Marie, one could say he gives it to her. He is a subject pronoun that replaces proper noun Luc. It is a direct object pronoun that replaces apple. And her is an indirect object pronoun that replaces the name Marie. How to replace an indirect object with a pronoun. Remember, indirect object pronouns, COI, also precede the conjugated verb. In this example, one could replace Marie with Louis to say Luc gives the apple to her. Luc lui donne la pomme. Notice that the indirect object pronoun appears before the verb, just like our direct object pronouns did. Now, here's our table. You might want to write this down of our pronouns in French. These are our indirect object pronouns, or as they're called in French, compléments d'objet indirects, COI. 2 columns, singular and plural. 3 rows, first person, second person, and third person. First one is me, or M apostrophe, before a vowel. Second person singular is te, T apostrophe, before a vowel, or vous, if you're speaking in a formal context. Third person singular is lui, for him or her, or it. First person plural is nous, for us. Second person plural is vous, for all of you, or y'all. And third person plural is leur. Looking at these 2 at the bottom, Louis should not be confused with the stress pronoun for him. As a COI, it can mean him or her. Also, leur should not be confused with the possessive pronoun for their, as in, say, leur chien, it's their dog. Compared to the COD, the third person pronouns are the only 2 that changed. Also, they don't change according to gender. Lui can mean him, her, or it, and leur means them, no matter their gender. All right, some common verbs that use indirect objects. Parler à quelqu'un, to speak to someone. Je parle à Paul, je lui parle. I'm speaking to him. Envoyer à quelqu'un, to send to someone. J'envoie le SMS à Julie, je lui envoie un SMS. Écrire à quelqu'un, to write to someone. J'écris à Thomas, je lui écris, I'm writing to him. Répondre à quelqu'un, to respond to someone. Je réponds à Julie, je lui réponds. Expliquer à quelqu'un, to explain to someone. J'explique à Thomas, je lui explique. I'm explaining to him. Notice that all of these verbs follow the pattern to blank, to someone. This makes it easy to remember that these verbs require the preposition à. Unfortunately, however, there are some verbs that do not use to someone in English. Therefore, it may be challenging to remember that they require the preposition à in French. These are obéir à quelqu'un, to obey someone. J'obéis au prof, je lui obéis. Désobéir à quelqu'un, to disobey someone. Il désobéit à Julie, il lui désobéit. Téléphoner à quelqu'un, to phone someone. Elle téléphone à Tom, elle lui téléphone. She phones him. Demander à quelqu'un, to ask someone. Je demande à Luc, je lui demande. I'm asking him. Notice with téléphoner à, don't confuse this with appeler, to call. The latter does not require a preposition and therefore does not take a COI. It would take a COD, a direct object pronoun, as in elle l'appelle, she calls him. Here are some more verbs that use indirect objects. Notice that in French they all have the preposition à, even though in English we may not use a preposition in that spot. So, conseiller à quelqu'un, demander à quelqu'un, déplaire, dire, emprunter, faire mal à, that's a useful one, interdire à, s'intéresser à, manquer à quelqu'un. This one is easily confusing for English speakers. In English, we say, I miss him, but in French, we say, he is missed by me being an indirect object there. Ordonner à, pardonner à, sourire à, and voler à. There are many others. It can get quite complicated with other prepositions, and there are also some verbs that have indirect objects but don't use prepositions at all. But for now, let's just focus on verbs that use the preposition à, just for the sake of simplicity, yeah? Okay, here are some examples. Look at this sentence. They are speaking to me. Me is an indirect object pronoun which can be replaced with the COI me. Il me parle. Right? Your verb is parler à. There's our preposition à. And like the COD, the COI appears before the verb. I am responding to you. You is an indirect object pronoun which can be replaced with the COI te. Je te réponds. Right? Our verb is répondre à. Julie is writing to you, to all of you, say you as a group. You is an indirect object pronoun which can be replaced with the COI vous. Julie vous écrit. Right? The verb is écrire à. He is not obeying us. Now remember, in English we don't have a preposition there, but the French will use a preposition for obéir à quelqu'un. Us is an indirect object pronoun which can be replaced with the COI nous. Il ne nous obéit pas. Right? Our verb is obéir à. Luc is explaining to her. Her is an indirect object pronoun which can be replaced with COI lui. Luc lui explique. Our verb is expliquer à. We are asking them. Them is an indirect object pronoun which can be replaced with COI leur. On leur demande. Our verb is demander à. Now, COI in the passé composé. Like COD, COI appear before the auxiliary or conjugated verb in the passé composé. Luc lui a donné la pomme. Luc gave her the apple. So, a donné stays together. Lui goes with a, our auxiliary verb, because it's conjugated. So it stays really close to that verb. To make it negative, the negative phrase, such as ne pas, goes around the COI and the auxiliary verb. Luc ne lui a pas donné la pomme. So Luc did not give her the apple. The indirect object pronoun, lui, for her, has to stay close to the auxiliary verb, a. And the ne pas goes around both of them. Now, what do you know? See if you can do some of these on your own. He's giving me the keys. Our verb is donner à. Il me donne les clés. Number 2, we are speaking to them. Our verb is parler. Nous leur parlons. Number 3, I'm replying to her now. The verb is répondre à. Je lui réponds maintenant. She is visiting him tomorrow. Now, you could say visiter, but typically visiter is used with places, so let's look at rendre visite. Elle lui rend visite demain. She's paying him a visit tomorrow. We don't obey them. Our verb is obéir à. You could use on leur obéit pas, or nous ne leur obéissons pas. And George isn't asking us. Remember, to ask is demander. It's false cognate in English. Georges ne nous demande pas. George isn't asking us. Now let's look at some in the passé composé. Number 1, I spoke to him yesterday. Again, our verb is parler. Je lui ai parlé hier. Number 2, she sent us an SMS. Our verb is envoyer à. Elle nous a envoyé un SMS. We didn't write to her. Our verb is écrire. You could use on lui a pas écrit, or you could use nous. Nous ne lui avons pas écrit. Number 4, they asked him earlier. Again, our verb is demander à. Ils lui ont demandé plus tôt. And then the last one, you didn't respond to me. Our verb is répondre. Tu ne m'as pas répondu. You didn't respond to me. Or even in English, as we would say, you haven't responded to me. So we say haven't, it's the word have that we make negative, not responded. All right, that's it for now. Merci beaucoup. Au revoir. À la prochaine. And don't forget to watch the next video on how to use direct and indirect object pronouns in the same sentence. Bonne journée.